Hello, this is Ed Markey speaking. Welcome to the Ed Markey podcast. Okay, so
Let me know. Oh, man. Welcome back to the podcast. And today we're here in Boston with the Green New Deal mayor for the United States of America, Michelle Wu, the mayor of the city of Boston, who ran as the Green New Deal mayor. And she has been a relentless advocate for making sure that Boston becomes the greenest city, not just in the United States, but the greenest city in the world. So welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks
Madam
for having
Mayor.
me. It's great to see you.
So could you tell us a little bit about what motivates you? You've been an organizer for your whole life, but you decided to take on this challenge for Boston to ensure that it becomes the leader in climate change. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I grew up in an immigrant family. I'm the oldest kid, and my parents came to this country just for the American dream. And growing up, always kind of feeling like I saw barriers everywhere for my mom and dad, language barriers, cultural barriers. For me, this sense of feeling at home was something that was so precious, and I always could sense when it wasn't the case. And so today, I now get to work to try to close gaps and create opportunities, and our goal every single day is to make Boston a home for everyone, in every sense of the word. Housing that people can afford, clean air and water, and being in community with the people that they love. So as I just walked in from City Hall, just down the plaza, and with the wind and the rain, and today we had snow, and it just, the reminders that we get every single week now as a coastal community about how much we have to keep going in order to protect our future, but more importantly, tap into the opportunities that are in front of us with great jobs, with the opportunity, with the health and wealth that this will provide for our residents.
And we can see the lead on the news for the last 2 days up here in Boston
Yeah.
are the storm effects on all the beaches along the coastline of Massachusetts, just wiping them out. And we know that when a storm like this happens in April, when people have snow warnings, that it's not just global warming, it's global weirding
Yes.
that's happening. So
Absolutely.
people go, well, this proves there is no global warming. No, it's just the opposite. It proves the craziness that climate change is causing.
At the city level, we're responsible for a lot of really important things, but one skill set that I have had to develop in my 3 years now is understanding everything about snowstorms. And when you prepare for extreme weather, when we get the report that it might snow or rain or something else happening, immediately we start going down the checklist. How much precipitation is going to come down, how fast, because that is about whether our drains that were actually sized for 100 years ago, if they can handle the capacity that's going to come down. When will it happen? Will it actually coincide with high tide, in which case we need to be prepared for a whole nother set of inches of water that could be coming over the coastline? How much rain have we gotten recently? Because if it's been a lot and the ground's already soaked up, the ground won't be able to absorb water, and it'll then flow down and cause more flooding. And so we are lucky that Boston hasn't already been hit by one of these gigantic storms. Even when it's sunny outside, multiple times a year, we get sunny day flooding now, where blue skies, no sign of wind, and just from the sea level alone at high tide, it's causing flooding in the downtown area, Morrissey Boulevard, or other East Boston parts of our coastline. So when you have high tide, plus storms, plus wind, then it's really a matter of basic life safety.
Yeah, so I introduced the Green New Deal with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just 5 years ago. And it was criticized in many quarters. Well, what's that all about? What are you trying to do? Why are the ambitions so high? But why are you talking about housing and transit and healthcare as part of the Green New Deal? So as the mayor, I know you got a lot of resistance initially. So what's happening with that conversation, especially with, we'll call them the older constituencies in the city? Do they increasingly understand what your goals are?
Well, unfortunately, like it or not, believe it or not, the evidence is clear every day. You look at the weather and we see whether it's the rain and storms or how Boston is becoming much hotter in the summer or how we barely have had any snowstorms now in the last 2 years. And oftentimes it's the best ideas that get the initial pushback when they're first floated. Free public transportation, for example, right? We know that this makes a difference in people's lives. We know that it works. And we know that it's the best investment we can make in our future. And what I really believe is that has always been Massachusetts and Boston's legacy. We are home to the first public school in the country, first library, first public park. Imagine when the idea of creating the first free library was first introduced, right? Though you just have to promise you'll bring it back. You don't have to pay anything at some point in the future. But that was what enabled everyone to access learning and education and culture and history. And so we remain at the forefront of investing in those big new ideas that actually are what's going to make for the most secure future for everyone.
So it was just 4 years ago that you and I and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley had a press conference on the Freedom to Move Act.
That's right.
How can we have more federal funding in order to help cities be able to make it more affordable for people to be able to have fare free bus routes? So as mayor, you have made that a central part of your agenda. So can you talk a little bit about how the Freedom to Move Act is now basically what the policy is in the city?
Yeah, the idea is that public transportation is a public good, just like schools and libraries and parks. We all benefit when everyone gets access to education, where everyone can have green space in their lives. And similarly, we all benefit when more people can rely on and afford public transportation. Even if you're not on those trains, your commute when you're driving or when you're walking or getting where you need to go is better because more people are on transit out of the roads. The air that you breathe is cleaner when more people are leaving behind their fossil fuel cars and getting on public transit. And for buses in particular, free transit makes the service work better too. We have collected all the data on the 3 lines, the 23, the 28, and the 29 buses in Boston. These are some of the highest ridership routes that have recovered faster than any other one since the pandemic because they're free. And any time of day, I get on the 28 bus. It's one of those lines that uses a big double buses that are connected by the stretchy material in the middle. And it's always packed. People going to school, going to work, going to pick up their little one from childcare, going to church, going to the community center. And what people have said to me is that, yes, it saves the money that you otherwise would have needed to put on your T card, and every little bit helps. But most of all, it just saves the mental stress. You feel free, that you don't have to try to ration how you're going to get everything done on one bus trip, pick up the kids, go to the grocery store. You can move around however you need to move around to make it the pieces of your life fit together.
And you made it your goal to try to move the bus fleet to all electric as well. And that was one of the goals which we had in the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill. And then Boston applies for funding to begin to move the fleet of buses over to all electric. You want to talk about that?
The day that I got your phone call that we were going to get the funding for 50 new electric school buses.
50? Did you say 50?
So this will get us up to 90 buses total.
I just want to keep repeating these numbers, okay? It's all the future.
I thought you were joking.
No. The future is now. Yeah.
I said 15 or 50, and then I said this must be for all of Massachusetts, right? And the resources were delivered by our federal delegation, and this is another example where the benefit is just spread everywhere. For the kids who are riding on these buses, they're not just going from, some other, regular car. They're going from diesel buses over to electric. The pollution that won't be in the air anymore is going to impact the neighbors who live nearby, the bus drivers who are sitting on these buses all day, and everybody is just over the moon, and we're so excited.
And again, you're the leader because you're applying for big numbers to just be, the cutting edge nationally. And then last fall, you and I, we were out at Franklin Park celebrating the $11 million for the tree canopy that is being funded, that the city of Boston is now going to take and plant trees, because obviously there are urban heat centers,
That's right.
that make it harder for people, again, like you're saying, for the same families that live next or near where the buses are that are diesel and emitting all these fumes. Well, they're the same families that don't have kind of the tree coverage. So can you talk about that and what it means to the city?
The best climate change fighting technology we have is trees. It brings the temperature down, it holds the water in the ground, it creates peace and tranquility and beauty. And I remember that press conference because we were doing it out in the middle of the trees in the park, and I had a spider crawling up me. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Someone had to run over and grab it up. We were in the thick of nature. But what's important for me about the Green New Deal is that it's not just the vision for what our future has to be one day in order to address all the needs that we have. It's about all of the jobs and opportunities that come from getting the process right of getting to that future. And so whether it's with the school buses or with this trees investment, we've also been able to use those resources and build the workforce that's going to have those jobs. We have Madison Park Vocational Technical School high school students now managing and servicing the electric school buses for Boston, and we have the staffing through our Power Corps program that trains young people in the green economy to help manage all of the work that's going to happen to actually get these trees planted and
Right.
in the right places.
And it gave me an opportunity, that press conference, to recite the poem I had to learn
That's right.
in the sixth grade, and recite to the other students the poem by Joyce Kilmer, "I think that I shall never see a poem as beautiful as a tree." And then I continued on. I think there's
There
some
was no
laughter by
question.
the laughter
No, there was no
and the
question
people
where you would be in the future.
who were listening.
Getting all the-
But in other words, we used to celebrate Arbor Day. We used to celebrate trees. And that's what the city of Boston is now going to take the leadership role on again for urban America, to make sure that those trees are planted. And again, if we want a good future, we have to plant the trees today. We have
Yep.
to start.
Yep.
Right? If we
And-
want the next generation to enjoy them, today is the first day for their lives.
That's
huh?
right. And every bit of resource that we have to make these changes, we are squeezing as much as we can out of it. So with the trees, for example, how we are planting them, again, with the jobs that are being created, is also thinking about where they go in the ground and what kind of surfaces are around them. This is actually going to help us make our sidewalks more accessible. It'll help us lay more porous pavement so that it will retain stormwater as well. So it's kind of a 360-degree approach.
It's incredible. And today, as we're talking, the EPA, Michael Regan, and the Vice President, Kamala Harris, are down announcing the rules now for the climate bank, for the Green Bank. And you and I, we hosted Michael Regan over at the Franklin Field Housing Project in the middle of last year, talking about the promise of the climate bank. Mm-hmm. So they're announcing today $20 billion will be going out into those climate banks across the country that Boston can then begin to apply for housing, for
It's
other.
amazing.
So what excites you about a climate bank, what you might be able to use it for?
Yeah, that day when we were in Franklin Field, I remember the story of Miss Josie who spoke, and she talked about how living in her public housing apartment that had not had the resources over many decades to be renovated how it should have been, that her asthma was exacerbated by the appliances or the ventilation that wasn't venting all the way up from the bathroom. And since then, with some of the other federal dollars that we've had, we've already started to be able to remodel and redo several of those Franklin Field apartments, with phasing in for the rest of it to have all electric appliances, all new ventilation, to ensure that the health benefits are really there, and that it will be serviced by a network geothermal energy system that is going in the ground there through a partnership that we have as well. But in terms of the climate bank financing, it goes to make those improvements, whether it's in housing, to build new affordable housing, or to adjust the little things that actually matter most in how someone feels about the most important places where they spend their time and they're with their family.
Yeah, and again, those historically have been environmental sacrifice zones. those are the people who have been most adversely affected historically by environmental injustice. And as we were talking earlier, I grew up three blocks from the Malden River, and my mother used to say to me, Eddie, whatever you do, I'm 10 years old, don't swim in the Malden River. So when your mother says to you, don't swim in the Malden River, and it's 3 blocks away, you know you're not Tom Sawyer on the Mississippi ready for these adventures. And it's because the coal companies, the rubber companies, the chemical companies, they had all used the Malden River as a dumping ground. And it was black with a pre-Jimi Hendrix purple haze over the Malden River growing up. And so it was something that was kind of just accepted, not questioned, except your mother said, don't go near it.
Yep.
So what you're doing is you're now the national leader in making sure that the city of Boston rectifies these historic injustices that affected those who were most vulnerable historically.
Yeah, and I mean, the difference that it makes not only for wildlife to flourish, for clean water, of all the ways that the water in that river seeps into the ground and affects other life systems, but just to have fun, to be able to let kids go and get their feet wet and have fun. We want to create those opportunities with all of the open spaces that we have. Some of the funding that you helped deliver for us for Moakley Park and its renovation means not only that we will have improvements to a beautiful park right on the water, but that is one of the main flood paths over into the public housing development right across the street from there. And so it's always about trying to make sure we are addressing the things that need to be fixed, but also in the meantime and through that, delivering and making the opportunities and experiences of residents even better.
Yeah, and the Malden River now has fish in it. You know, we've cleaned it up. And Tufts has their crew is on the Malden River. And now Malden High School decided they'll have their own crew, which would have been unimaginable when I was growing up.
And sometimes
a public
people
high
say-
school with a crew team. Huh?
Sometimes people say, we can't afford to do this, right? We can't afford all the money it's going to take to remediate this waterway or to transition into a healthier building, but all of the costs that we are saving down the line by taking action now far, far outweighs whatever we're talking about. All of the opportunities that are created now on the river because of the regulatory systems, because of the investments that were made, are now returning so much of that investment.
And we saw during the COVID crisis that those that were in the worst housing or those that had the least access to healthcare, they also had the highest levels of asthma.
That's right.
And then that made them very vulnerable
That's right.
to another lung disease, which was arriving, COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we then saw the highest rates amongst Black, brown, immigrant communities.
Mm-hmm.
So it is our job to make sure that they get the extra attention, which is what actually the climate bill provides when, as I drafted it, 50% of all the money has to go to Black, brown, and immigrant communities, right? And so that's really going to be a big part of our future. We have to protect it. Republicans and Fox News is attacking the climate bank, but the basis for it is, oh my God, look where they're going to be spending that money. Look at the people who are going to be the beneficiaries of it. And again, it's all part of this need to just flip this story historically and just show how they were the ones affected by the earlier decisions.
The logic it boggles my mind how there can be a group that in one breath says the whole sky is, everything's falling apart, cities are these places where everything is unsafe and horrible things are happening and it's the worst crisis ever. And at the same time, that's why we need to do nothing and go back to how things were before. And so if you recognize that there's a problem, and there are reminders, unfortunately, every day about the need for more affordability, more climate resilience, more equity in all our communities, let's do something about it. That actually helps all of us.
And every night it's criticized, and they're saying, it's socialism. Look what you're doing. You're subsidizing wind and solar and energy efficiency and trees. That's crazy. That's just socialism. But what we say back to them was, well, you didn't complain for 100 years of subsidies for the oil, gas, and coal industries, and all we're saying is give us some of that socialism to remediate these environmental justice problems while creating jobs and protecting families. And they just don't have a good answer for us.
They just want socialism for themselves, not for anyone.
It's socialism for the rich, and it's Darwinian,
Free market, everything,
market
yeah.
for everybody else. That's their game plan. So it's just so great to have you on our podcast and to have the mayor leading the way, not just for our country but for the world. So thank you, Mayor Wu. Thank you for your great leadership and your friendship.
Thank you for all that you and your entire team are doing for the city and for our whole Commonwealth.
Thank you. So we'll see you on the next podcast.